Hi there, how's it going? Welcome back to Breakfast All Day. So we've got to talk about a movie. We've got to talk about the behind-the-scenes stuff with the movie that has happened since the movie came out. And that movie is Cold Pursuit. It is your annual Liam Neesoning.
Biannual.
Is it every 2 years?
Yeah, it feels like every year.
Okay.
But,
okay.
Ben, you meant semi-annual, like we get 2 a year.
Oh, how great would that be?
What's biennial? Is when they do
every 2 years.
mattress sales. Anyway, Ben, will you tell us about Cold Pursuit, please?
Oh, sure. I wasn't expecting to, but Cold Pursuit is the story of Liam Neeson. He has the greatest snowblower in the world.
Also the greatest name, Nils Coxman.
Nils Coxman.
Well,
yeah.
because in the original Norwegian film that it was based on, he was Niels Dickman.
Dickman.
Is that right?
Yeah, this is based on a film called In Order of Disappearance that came out in 2014.
Same director.
Yeah, Dickman
Cousin
and
of
Coxman.
Mike Duffman.
And he lives sort of above a resort town in Colorado, a ski escape town for wealthy folks. But there are some, there are regular folks who live in the town, and he clears the roads during the snow. He clears the one main road to enable people to get around town and get to Denver. Apparently, it's weird. There's only one small 2-lane highway that leads to Denver. You'd think Denver would have many more access routes, but apparently not. And he lives there with his wife, Laura Dern, and his son. And then a tragedy befalls the family, and because it's a Liam Neeson movie released in January or February, then he seeks revenge.
Are you saying his son is taken?
Again.
Again?
That's right.
And he goes on a non-stop crusade?
He has a particular set of skills, in addition to snowblowing. And the movie is that story, and then it's much more than that story. And in the end, it feels like a Coen Brothers movie that they turned down.
Yes.
And there's a great deal of violence and a great deal of death. And it is not just in any way Liam Neeson's story of hunting down who has wronged his family. It becomes something much more that occasionally works and sometimes doesn't, but is certainly not the movie I think any of us expected.
Yeah, at some point this movie kind of abandons Coxman as a character, and you're kind of like, when it comes back to him, you're like, oh, right. This is the guy that started
that's
all
right.
this.
This is a Liam Neeson movie, but it's been 32 minutes since we got a lot of Liam Neeson.
Usually these Liam Neeson movies are like all Liam Neeson all the time, and this one starts expanding outward, and you start getting to know like the drug mob, and then the other rival drug mob, and the local cops, and so there's like all these characters sort of jockeying for position, and you're right, in a very Coen Brothers way, it's trying to be funny at the same time, and the funny stuff is funny and the violent stuff is violent, but the two don't ever really mesh in a satisfying way, at least not for me.
And the funny stuff isn't always funny.
No,
and I'm curious whether you guys, how you feel about
some
this.
of it is, I think.
No question. It's not unfunny.
Yeah.
But some of it is, and oddly, this has nothing to do with the issues surrounding the movie, which we will also discuss, but some of it to me, and I don't find myself a particularly sensitive person, some of it felt racist. Like, it just, or again, the words that we're being told now not to use, but certainly racially reckless.
Well, they're definitely, I thought they were sort of playing around with the idea of what you can and can't say. There's the rival drug mob is Native American. They're all indigenous peoples. And for example, there is one single member of that organization who is South Asian. So of course the other people in that group refer to him as the fucking Indian,
right.
Which I thought was funny. I thought that's a ballsy joke.
That's a ballsy joke.
Right, the reservation joke was pretty funny.
But there's a wife of one of the characters is I guess Vietnamese.
That was...
She's doing her nails, and she's talking in a very stereotypically Vietnamese way. There's a joke about the dialect of a black hitman that, again, is supposed to be funty. And I get that the point of the joke is supposed to...
Eskimo.
We're supposed to make fun of the guy pointing out the dialect, but it just... It didn't... I thought it was weirdly uncomfortable and unnecessary and did not deliver the laugh.
It doesn't all land, and I don't know if it's because the director is a foreigner and maybe doesn't quite get the niceties of race relations in the United States. But no, you're right. There are some of them that definitely don't work. And also I think the movie gets so overcrowded that like Laura Dern disappears very
Oh,
early
yeah,
on
right.
after having had nothing to do.
It's a total waste of Laura Dern. Yeah.
Yeah.
So did any of you guys see the original Norwegian film this was based on?
I have
No.
not.
Okay.
Evidenced by our reaction
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I didn't even know it was.
Yeah. No.
No, I don't watch
Yes, I
movies.
saw it. I enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, so the same director did both, and so often when directors of a foreign language film then try to remake their own film in English, like as you say, Alonso, something does get lost in the translation, and there's a lot of the bits fall flat. And the original, it was this kind of really dark humor, like pitch black, like dry, dark humor, and it worked that first time around. And here, it just. The pacing just feels kind of flat to me. I mean, there should be like highs and lows in a film that is this dramatic and which so many lives are lost in really brutal ways. And it all felt kind of like one note to me. And again, like Liam Neeson has made so many films of this ilk and so many that are so much better that it's impossible not to watch this and compare it to those movies as well, because you know what he can do with that particular set of skills, as you say.
And when somebody goes through a snowplow, it's like, well, if we weren't already thinking about Fargo, I am now.
Right.
Yeah,
It's the wood chipper.
But like in Fargo, for example, and in Fargo, the television show too, and the dark humor surrounding the brutal violence. The brutal violence does not have a giant emotional kick to it, which I think sometimes, I'm not saying it's that the deaths are worthless or that they don't mean something, but here there is at least one death that it's awful and it's terrible and you're grieving, and then the sort of fun part about the deaths, and they do a little fun gimmick about each character who dies. It doesn't feel fun because you're thinking, you've made me like a couple of people who are now in horrible mourning and their lives will never again be the same.
It
and
gets
I don't,
caught in your throat.
Right, it gets caught in your throat, and I don't want your little fun death joke. I'm not digging it here. And
Also,
Fargo manages to thread that needle effectively, and this did not.
If I recall, because I've seen a lot of movies in the last 2 weeks, there's a thing with a dog here. Is there a thing with a dog here, or am I thinking of something else that I saw?
I think you're thinking of something else.
Okay, anyway, I recall seeing a thing with a dog where I'm like, you just lost me. But yeah, but there are other deaths here that do not work. I agree. And the thing with the gimmick with how they depict each person's death, they do that in the original too.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
With the title cards explaining
again,
who they all are.
That could definitely work. And then finally, when they kill a Jewish guy, we didn't know he was Jewish. They'd had crosses. All of a sudden, there's a Star of David. That could be fun. By the way, one other quick little joke that doesn't work. There's a not a conceptually unfunny idea of a guy who manages to sleep with 31% of all the hotel maids that he encountered, motel maids.
Oh, right.
Right. But then the execution of it's not great, but then the execution of that joke is that, oh, this one's older and uglier, and now whatever. It just again,
It just doesn't work.
it doesn't work, and it was like the third sort of racially adjacent joke that didn't work, and it just struck me that these are falling short, except for the Native Americans making fun of the fucking Asian.
Yes. So what are your numbers then? Or is there something else you want to say,
Well,
Matt?
yeah, I mean, I thought that there were moments of this movie that it does approach what the Coen brothers can do tonally, and there's some moments of dialogue that made me think of, like, Elmore Leonard.
Yeah.
That some of the discussions that the guys had about their lives, like, because in a lot of cases, these characters, they get fleshed out in a real way, almost more so than Coxman does.
Well, yeah, Tom Bateman as the sort of head of the main sort of drug family that's a funny, interesting, eccentric performance.
The Denver druggie.
Right.
Yes.
Who's in a custody battle with his ex-wife for their son.
Right,
Yeah.
and then like the stuff with the cops and the way Emmy Rossum
Emmy
is like
Rossum
kind
is-
of flirting with the guy to get the stuff from him. And
Yeah, the cop stuff was pretty good. I was more interested in. I thought it would be about the cops sort of tracking down, trying to stop Liam Neeson from exacting revenge, but sort of admiring him at the same time. And I thought that movie probably would have been better.
Yeah, there are a lot of elements that work, and I wasn't bored, but
No, I wasn't bored.
doesn't.
I was bored.
It just doesn't quite gel.
So I forgot, before we do numbers, we got to talk really fast about what is happening in real life behind the scenes with this movie, which it in no way, influences our feelings about the film, because what we have learned is...
I wrote my review weeks ago.
Right. So Liam Neeson did this interview with The Guardian?
The Independent.
The Independent. And he acknowledged, while sitting next to his co-star, Tom Bateman, that many, many years ago, he was so enraged by learning about a friend's rape that
I thought a family member.
I think a
Oh,
family
was it?
member.
Okay. But he wanted to go and exact revenge. And so he only knew that this person was described as a black man, and so he went out in the streets looking for a black man to kill,
like with a baseball bat,
with a kosh, as he put it out, like a bludgeon.
So,
or in Ireland, the shillelagh.
Yes. So this happened decades ago, and he says in this interview that
back when that was totally cool.
It was like blackface, right?
Right.
It was fine. So. I don't know
He's just announced he's moving to Virginia.
I don't know why that's come out now, but he felt the need to say this now, and he acknowledges in this interview that he had never spoken about this before, and there has been, understandably, massive backlash to this, to the extent that, like, was it last night, 2 nights ago, they were supposed to have had the red carpet premiere of this film?
They had the premiere, but they canceled the red carpet part because he didn't want to answer more questions.
Right, and now there's people like, oh, he should get digitized out of Men in Black, and...
What do you guys think of this?
I think he said something really stupid.
He said something really stupid, and it is that thing of like, this is why people have publicists. You know, like this is why you don't say everything on your mind into a mic. You know,
yeah. We do.
It would,
but we don't have a movie coming out.
Oh, you have no idea.
Also, I haven't walked around looking for black people to beat up.
It's the kind of story that you know, if you felt the need to say it, needed to be written about and put in as much context as you could in your memoir. But you know, I'm of two minds on it. On one sense, he correctly says, this is a humiliating part of my life, and I regret it, and thankfully, mercifully, I didn't hurt anybody. Right. But he acknowledges, like, almost because by chance I didn't run into anyone who I could hurt. I now realize how monstrous that was. All that is good. Then there is the white privilege part of it, which was that, he went out and did this and thought it was okay at the time, and he will suffer no real consequences for it. His career, I suppose, it's possible might. But what it leaves out is that it's not just one guy who went out looking to do this. Thousands and thousands and thousands of guys went out looking to do this over the course of American history.
Why George Zimmerman killed Trayvon Martin.
And then they did it. And they lynched black people, and they beat them to death or maimed them in some way, and there were no significant repercussions for centuries and decades in this country and around the world. So, that's why you don't talk about it flippantly, even though I don't think he thought it was flippantly.
Right.
And so I think there should be a degree of understanding thrown his way, because he did attempt to contextualize it and admit that it was wrong, but it does not acknowledge the broader, bigger picture of the history of racial violence in America.
I would say memo to everybody: do not discuss sensitive subjects on the press tour for your movie. Like,
right.
there's it's just it
becomes a tweet, it becomes a headline, and you don't get all the context, as Ben was talking about, right?
Right. Like, I mean, we see that over and over again, right? Like, the context of what Bradley Cooper says gets left out about him saying, I feel like I didn't do my job not getting the nomination for Best Director, and then follows up with, and I realize how foolish that thought is, but nobody covers that part, right? So, will Neeson continue to have her career? Probably so. I mean, Mark Wahlberg was convicted of beating the hell out of a guy, and that record's been expunged. And we've all acted like, everybody's
we know what happened,
right.
But he's carries
right,
on.
And that, I believe, was also a racially motivated.
It was an Asian guy,
right? So, will Neeson get past this? He's kind of doing the apology tour, like he went on and said, like, I think he'll probably come back. But yeah, it was a really stupid thing to say.
And there's never a good time to say that kind of thing. But especially
like you said, in a memoir.
I mean, you can tell your family.
Like on a press tour is not a good place.
No, because you or you don't know what the headline is going to be, but you should know what the takeaway from that is going to be. And so, I like Liam Neeson as an actor, and I love this sort of, I love the rebirth at 60 that he's had. But that was dumb, and we'll only, I hesitate always to say only time will tell, but I'm afraid only time will tell.
All right, so
our numbers for the movie?
Yeah, yes, we have numbers.
Right.
There's also numbers. I'm saying 5.
6.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry, 5.4. I'm looking at the wrong column. 5.4 for me.
6.
Yeah, I feel like to some extent most of our talk was like only the things that didn't work. I was not bored. I was sort of engaged. It just falls short of what it certainly could have been and aspired to be, 6.8.
Yeah, I'm pretty close to where Ben is, 7.
Our number's a 5. It is, right? No, hold on, that's math. Wait. Sorry, I did math with a calculator and it didn't work.
6.3.
6.3 is a lot higher than 5. Wow, math is tough. All right, that's at 84% on the tomato meter.
Yes, sorry. We're at BeFast All Day on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And we're here on YouTube, and we're also a podcast that you can subscribe to at Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating, or go dig up whatever other podcatcher you like. Stitcher, Spotify, Podbean, Google Play. We're all over the place.
Thanks. Bye. So I'm thinking we can skip Everybody Knows this week, perhaps, in the name of time.